For 700 years, sailors swore something the size of an island lived under the water, ships vanishing without wreckage, arms thick as masts wrapping around hulls, eyes the size of shields staring up from below the waterline. For most of human history, this was dismissed as superstition, a story sailors told to explain storms, to explain loss, to explain the things the ocean takes and never gives back. It wasn't superstition. This is the giant squid, and for nearly 4 centuries after sailors first described it, not a single scientist on Earth had seen one alive. The legend has a name, the Kraken. Norse sailors described it as early as the 1180s, a creature so massive it could be mistaken for an island, so powerful it could drag a fully rigged ship beneath the waves in seconds. Carl Linnaeus, the father of modern taxonomy, the man who invented the system we still use to classify every living thing, briefly included the Kraken in his own scientific catalogue in 1735, then quietly removed it in later editions. Even science for a moment couldn't fully dismiss it, but here's the strange part. The legend and the animal were never as far apart as people assumed. The first confirmed physical evidence didn't come from a hunter or a sailor. It came from Denmark in the 1500s, when something unrecognizable washed up on a beach. Locals called it a sea monk, a creature that looked disturbingly human from a distance, draped and hooded, lying motionless in the surf. Naturalists at the time had no framework for what they were looking at. It would take centuries before anyone connected that washed-up shape to a squid at all. For the next 300 years, that's how science met this animal. Not through observation, through wreckage. In 1857, a Danish zoologist named Architeuthis Steenstrup formally examined a beak recovered from a stranded carcass and gave the animal its scientific name, Architeuthis, from the Greek for ruling squid. Not because anyone had watched it rule anything, because of a single hooked beak and the shredded remains of a body too damaged to tell its own story. And then, in 1873, something happened that should have changed everything immediately. Off the coast of Newfoundland, 2 fishermen named Theophilus Picot and Daniel Squires encountered a living giant squid at the surface. It attacked their boat. Picot struck it with an axe, severing one of its arms, and the animal fled, leaving behind a tentacle nearly 6 meters long. It was, by any definition, the first violent witnessed encounter between a human being and a living Architeuthis. But a severed arm in a bucket is not the same as watching the animal live its life. The world had proof the Kraken was real. It still had no idea how the Kraken actually behaved. For the next 130 years, the pattern barely changed. Carcasses surfaced after storms. Sperm whales were caught with sucker-scarred skin and squid beaks lodged in their stomachs. Evidence of battles fought entirely out of human sight. Fishing nets occasionally hauled up bodies already dead, already decaying, already useless for behavioral science. Everything we learned came from animals that could no longer move, no longer hunt, no longer show us anything except their own anatomy. And the anatomy alone was almost enough to keep the legend alive on its own terms. The giant squid's eyes can reach up to 27 centimeters across, the largest eyes of any animal alive, built to gather every scrap of light in a world with almost none. Its 2 feeding tentacles can shoot outward to seize prey, then retract toward a beak sharp enough to slice flesh into pieces of radula. A tongue lined with rows of teeth can then grind down. Mantle length alone can reach 2 meters. Add the tentacles, and the full length of a mature female may stretch past 12 meters, nearly the length of a city bus, suspended in total darkness, somewhere between 300 and 1,000 meters down. It is, depending how you count, the second largest invertebrate that has ever lived, smaller only than its even more elusive relative, the colossal squid. But size and anatomy were never the real mystery. The mystery was behavior. How does an animal this large move? How does it hunt? Does it actually attack ships? Or was that always exaggeration stitched onto something real? For more than a century, nobody could answer that, because nobody had managed to watch one act like itself. That changed because of a different animal entirely. Sperm whales hunt giant squid at depth, and the scars they carry back to the surface, long parallel lines from squid suckers, told researchers something crucial. Wherever sperm whales fed, giant squid were probably nearby. In the early 2000s, a Japanese zoologist named Tsunemi Kubodera partnered with Kyoichi Mori, a local whale watcher who had spent years tracking sperm whale movements around the Ogasawara Islands south of Tokyo. If you couldn't find the squid directly, you could follow the animal that already knew where to look. For nearly 2 years, their teams returned again and again to the same stretch of ocean. A 5-ton boat, a crew of 2, a baited line dropped 900 meters down, rigged with a camera and a flash. On September 30th, 2004, after dozens of failed attempts that single day alone, something finally took the bait. An 8-meter giant squid struck the line and snagged its tentacle. The camera fired automatically, capturing more than 500 images over the next 4 hours as the animal fought to break free. It eventually did, tearing loose and leaving a 5.5-meter section of tentacle still hooked to the line. DNA testing confirmed what the photographs already suggested. For the first time in recorded history, a living giant squid had been documented in its natural habitat. It took another year before the images were released to the public. When they were, something the Kraken legend never quite captured became visible. This wasn't a sluggish, drifting creature waiting passively in the dark. The photographs showed an animal moving with force, with apparent aggression, wrapping itself around the bait with what looked like genuine intent. Whatever inspired centuries of sailors' stories, this clearly was not a passive animal. 2 years later, in December 2006, Kubodera's team went further. They didn't just photograph a giant squid, they brought one, alive, to the surface. A smaller female, roughly 3.5 meters long, was filmed and then hauled up, still living, the first time anyone had captured moving video of the species at all. It died shortly after reaching the surface. The pressure changed too extreme for a body built for darkness and depth. Even this was only a partial answer. A squid hooked on a line fighting for its life isn't behaving naturally. Researchers still hadn't seen one simply existing, undisturbed, in the place it actually lives. That finally happened in July 2012. A team including Kubodera, marine biologist Edith Widder, and squid specialist Steve O'Shea took a different approach entirely. Rather than bait the water with food, they built a lure designed to mimic something else common in the deep: bioluminescent light, the kind given off by jellyfish the squid may associate with prey activity nearby. From a submersible near the Bonin Islands, after dozens of dives, the lure worked. For the first time ever, scientists filmed a live giant squid behaving naturally in its own habitat. No hook, no bait, no struggle, just the animal, moving through the dark on its own terms. It had taken nearly 150 years from the first violent encounter with Picot and Squires off Newfoundland to finally watch the Kraken simply be itself. And even with that footage in hand, most of what we understand about this animal still comes from corpses. Its age is uncertain. Some estimates based on growth rings inside its beak suggest a lifespan of only 1 to a few years, an animal that may grow to the length of a bus and then die before it turns 5. Its mating behavior has barely been observed. Its full hunting strategy is mostly inferred from whale scars and stomach contents rather than direct observation. Even its population size remains officially listed as data-deficient, scientific language for, we genuinely do not know how many of these animals exist. What we do know suggests an animal built entirely around one problem: finding food and finding mates in a world with almost no light and almost no landmarks. Massive eyes to catch the faintest trace of bioluminescence. Tentacles built to strike at range rather than chase. A short life that may exist purely to grow large fast, reproduce once, and disappear back into the dark that made the legend possible in the first place. The old stories were never really wrong. They were just incomplete, stitched together from fragments. A hooded shape on a Danish beach, a severed arm in a Newfoundland bucket, scars on the body of a sperm whale. It took 700 years of sailors' fear, 4 centuries of scientific skepticism, and one persistent partnership between a zoologist and a whale watcher to finally close the gap between the monster on the page and the animal in the water. And even now, with photographs and video finally in hand, the giant squid remains closer to myth than almost any other creature we have actually confirmed to exist. Not because we stopped believing in it, because the ocean it lives in still refuses almost completely to let us in.